Hi folks, Hebrew for All. My name is Shlomo Eitan, and today we're actually going to learn the basics of reading. So I'm going to bring up a page so that I can do some writing for you, and I'm building with the assumption, the common assumption, that you have seen the class prior to this. In this case, I would be referring to the class entitled Hebrew for All, the Alphabet, Lesson 1. And this is really Hebrew for All, the Alphabet, Lesson 2, but really the goal is to teach you basic reading. So the first, and I stress that you have to be most effective, you have to have seen that video, because it showed you how to understand the script letters of the Hebrew language and not the box letters or the print letters. People only use the print letters. So here we go. So believe it or not, the class starts in English, concerning English reading. So if I make this letter B on the board up there in front of you, and I say to you, pronounce that letter. I don't say, give me the name of the letter. I say, pronounce that letter. So people, I think most naturally, will say, and I believe correctly, B. Absolutely correct. B. And if I would say, do it with a D, then people would say, D. As if to say that when we go to read these letters, the first sound that we make is, as it were, the most basic, fundamental sound associated with the letter. Now watch. And again, this is not a class about English reading, it's a class about Hebrew reading. But I think going over this is going to give you the strength to get into the Hebrew quickly. So now I do this. I stick this letter E after that B, and I say, read that. And you say to me, B. Now, a person could technically speaking say be, but I picked what I thought most people would be most likely to say, which is B. And let me do one over here too. And let me put an I here. And then how do you pronounce those two letters together? Let's say D. Okay, I've made my point. And my point is that in the English language, this letter here was given the name consonant. I'm very, very careful not to confuse people by using grammar terminology in my classes. Usually people can stomach consonant without having a sense of being intimidated come over there, and hence the confusion associated with that. This letter right here is called the vowel. And the vowel letters in the English language are A, E, I, O, and U. Okay? But you saw the relationship clearly between the B and the E and the D and the I. And now we're going to do a bit of the Hebrew together. Okay, so I'm going to take the letter bet here, script letter bet, just to remind you, and I'm going to ask you, well, what's the most basic sound you can associate with a bet? And the answer is, the name of the letter itself is bet. We're going to take the sound that the name of the letter begins with, and hence we're going to say B. And if it were Dalet, we would be saying D. So far, so good? Okay, now so watch. Here's the first vowel that we're going to be learning. We take the bet again, and we stick underneath it a T-bar or a straight line. Because in modern Israeli Hebrew, we're not going to be making any distinctions whatsoever between what I call the T-bar or the straight line. Notice no use of the perfect grammatical terms from the Hebrew language for the names of those vowels. That's intentional, folks. when I first started teaching, I made it quite clear to myself and to others I wasn't going to be confusing them with names that tended to send their heads reeling to all kinds of places that represented a turnoff to the Hebrew language, by far the most beautiful language that I know in the world. Hence, you have a T-bar and a straight line, and what's the fundamental sound that they give? Modern Israeli Hebrew, ba. So, if that's the case, and I take it a dalet, and I now stick the T-bar underneath it, so instead of just having the most basic, you could call it a caveman sound, d. So I stick that T-bar underneath that, and now I can read that as da. And if I stick a straight line underneath it, I can also read it as da. Okay? That's the basic idea of the Hebrew language, which postulates two important concepts of reading. One is that the vowel is either underneath the letter, telling you, as it were, how to move that basic sound, and the other aspect is, or possibility is, that the vowel is next to the letter. So if I take the same bet and I take this vowel, which has an O sound, I can now read this as bo or do, or, watch, bu or do. Now, what are the vowels, which I haven't even introduced yet? So we have a total of 10 vowels. One of them I'd call it tricky. What are the 10 vowels? You have, in modern Israeli Hebrew, the T-bar and the straight line, which are fundamentally an ah sound, as in card, bad. Now those are a teeny bit different, but let's go with those two. You have one dot with a yud after it, or simply one dot, which gives an E sound as in deed, bead. You have the O sound as in show, row, and the partner, as it were to this vowel in a somewhat different form, is this. That's what I call the only tricky one. It's rare, so you'll say it's tricky but that looks just like the T-bar that I used up above. Absolutely correct, and I appreciate the trickiness associated with it. I'm going to put a parenthesis around it. I won't be using it till a much later point in time, and then I'll explain to you as you need it. The next one, and you've seen it, is this vav, as it were, with a dot on the side. Incidentally, this one here I call the vav with a dot on top. This one I call the vav with a dot on the side. Or another form of the same exact vowel would be 3 dots going down on an angle, as in shoe. How do you do? And last but not least, you have an A sound, which can come in two different forms. I call those cat's eyes, or the cat's eyes, again, with the yud coming up after it. And then its pair, or dynamic duo, is three dots, which is, in this case, a different sound. This one being more like the S sound in shed, or the color red. And this one, the cat's eyes, being an A sound as in the month of May, or every day. Now, a lot of questions may come into your mind as to what was this breakdown between the two parts, either T-bar, straight line, which you say, Shlomo, in modern Israeli Hebrew, have the same sound, or one dot with a yud after it, or just one dot, which you said are essentially equal. The straight line with the dot on top, I call that the jump shot, the vav with the dot on top. Or, and I did put in parentheses there, this T-bar again looking thing, but I told you it's going to be so sufficiently rare that we don't have to really be concerned about it. And then, last but not least, not last but not least, then we had the vav with the dot on the side, which was U, and its virtual equivalent, which is those three dots going down on the side, on an angle, and then last but not least, a pair with a rather significant difference in sound. If it's the cat's eyes, A as in May, A as in day, or alternatively, three dots. I call those the three dots all the time, and that's an S sound. Now, that's a start, just to help you to become comfortable. A reminder, every letter in the Hebrew language, in order to be pronounced, must have either a vowel underneath it or to the left of it. And that's where we're going to stop for today. In our next class, reading 2, I'm going to give you more practice, and we're going to stick some words together. Now, what I suggest is that you develop a little bit of a familiarity practicing these vowels with letters that you feel confident of in the script form, not pushing yourself to read successions of vowels yet within one word, or syllables, within one word. And we'll pick up in the next class, most naturally, keeping this a relatively small unit with a fair amount of material having been given it, which may be totally new to some of you, and hoping that everyone feels that they're going to be able to master this. I'm sure you can. Stick with me, and in the next class, things will become more clear for sure. Shalom, shalom.